The 69-year-old man was arrested on Friday after two men and a woman were shot dead at a Kurdish cultural center and nearby Kurdish cafe in the French capital's busy central 10th district. Police say the man was believed to be the only shooter. The killings stunned a community preparing to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the unresolved murder of 3 activists, and prompted protests that led to clashes with police. The suspect said during questioning that a burglary at his home in 2016 had triggered a hatred of foreigners that became totally pathological, prosecutor Laure Becquieu said in a statement. After being transferred to a psychiatric unit on Saturday, the suspect was discharged from hospital and his police custody resumed on Sunday afternoon, the prosecutor's office said in a later update, adding he would be presented to an investigating magistrate on Monday. The office had already indicated on Saturday that a suspected racist motive had been added to initial accusations of murder and weapons offenses. During earlier questioning, the man described himself as depressive and having suicidal tendencies, recounting that he had planned to kill himself with a last bullet after his attack, the prosecutor said in the statement. A search at the home of the suspect's parents, where he lived, did not find evidence of any link to extremist ideology, she said, adding that he had first sought potential victims in a suburb of the French capital but abandoned that plan. The prosecutor had said previously that the suspect had been freed from detention recently while awaiting trial for a saber attack on a migrant camp in Paris a year ago. Kurdish representatives have called for Friday's shooting to be considered a terrorist attack. 3 other people were injured in the shooting. The prosecutor said 2 were still in hospital but their lives were not in danger.
Paris shooting. Suspect admits pathological hatred of migrants. The man accused of a deadly attack against the Kurdish community in Paris has admitted to a pathological hatred of migrants, French prosecutors say. The 69-year-old told investigators he had planned to kill non-European foreigners as he embarked on his shooting spree on Friday, they say. The suspect was placed in psychiatric care after being questioned by police. He is accused of opening fire at a Kurdish cultural center, killing 3 people and wounding another 3. The man, retired train driver named as William M., told police he had become depressed and suicidal after his home was burgled in 2016, the office of the Paris prosecutor said on Sunday. He admitted that since then, his hatred of foreigners had become totally pathological, the statement added. He then traveled to the Ahmet Kaya Kurdish Center in Paris's 10th district, where he carried out the attack. The man resented that community because Kurdish militiamen involved in the Syrian conflict had taken prisoners during their fight against Islamic State instead of killing them, the prosecutors say. A nearby restaurant and a hairdresser also came under fire before the man was arrested without a fight. He was detained on suspicion of murder, attempted murder, and acting with a racist motive. He has a history of weapons offenses and it has emerged that he was released on bail days before the assault. Last year he was charged with racist violence over a sword attack at a migrant camp in the French capital. The violence unfolded after Kurds had gathered peacefully in the Place de la République to pay tribute to the victims. In the aftermath of the shootings, Kurds have renewed calls to the French authorities for better protection. Community leaders met the Parisian police chief on Saturday. The community was again afraid, having been traumatized by the January 2013 murders, said a lawyer for the Kurdish Democratic Council in France.
Migrants from Texas dropped off outside VP Harris's home on freezing Christmas Eve. 3 buses coming from Texas dropped off about 140 recent migrants, including babies and young children, near Vice President Kamala Harris's residence in Washington, D.C. in historically frigid temperatures on Saturday evening. The drop-off appears to be the latest example of an effort by officials in Republican-led states, including Republican Gov. Greg Abbott, of busing migrants to liberal strongholds like New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. But immigration activists said Saturday's incident was particularly cruel because of the freezing temperatures in Washington, D.C., and because of the fact that it occurred on Christmas Eve. Madhvi Bahl, an organizer with the Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Network, confirmed the arrival of the migrants on Saturday to NBC News. Bahl called the stunt awful and said that it shows that the cruelty is the point. Her organization was one of several that helped provide shelter to the migrants arriving Saturday. DC was prepared and we showed up and welcomed folks, as we've been doing for months now, she added. The buses dropped the migrants near Harris's residence at the Naval Observatory. There were young children and babies on the buses that arrived, though Bahl said he group did not immediately know how many. Many of the adults who arrived lacked shoes, while others wore flip-flops or sandals, she said. Temperatures on Saturday night in some parts of Washington, D.C. reached as low as 10 degrees, one of the coldest Christmas Eves in the area in recent history. These people were freezing, Bahl said. The Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Network, as well as other groups, picked up the migrants and brought them to shelters where there was food and warm clothes. The group is also helping many of the arrivals find transportation to reach their final destinations. Messages left by NBC News with Abbott's office were not immediately returned. The Department of Homeland Security did provide a comment. The White House, in a statement, blamed Abbott for the stunt and accused him of having abandoned children on the side of the road in below freezing temperatures on Christmas Eve without coordinating with any federal or local authorities. This was a cruel, dangerous, and shameful stunt, Abdullah Hassan, a White House assistant press secretary, said in a statement. As we have repeatedly said, we are willing to work with anyone, Republican or Democrat alike, on real solutions, like the comprehensive immigration reform and border security measures President Biden sent to Congress on his first day in office, but these political games accomplish nothing and only put lives in danger, Hassan added. Busloads of migrants began arriving in liberal strongholds without warning earlier this year as Abbott, Arizona Gov. Doug Ducey and Florida Gov. Ron DeSantis sought to use the tactic to call attention to what they say are the Biden administration's failed border policies. Thousands of migrants have since arrived in New York, Washington, Chicago, and beyond, sending officials in those cities scrambling to provide a system of support services to them. Texas alone has sent nearly 15,000 migrants to other cities since April, according to a review by NBC News. There have been several instances of migrants being dropped off outside, or near, Harris's residence.
More migrants dropped off outside Vice President's home in freezing weather on Christmas Eve. Several busloads of migrants were dropped off in front of Vice President Kamala Harris's residence in Washington, D.C., on Christmas Eve in 18-degree weather late Saturday. An initial 2 busloads were taken to local shelters, according to an administration official. More buses arrived outside the Vice President's residence later Saturday evening. A CNN team saw migrants being dropped off, with some migrants wearing only t-shirts in the freezing weather. They were given blankets and put on another bus that went to a local church. The arrivals included asylum seekers from Ecuador, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Peru and Colombia, according to Fisher, who told CNN the buses were supposed to go to New York but were diverted to D.C. due to the weather. Busloads of migrants have been arriving in Washington weekly since April. SAMU First Response, a nonprofit that has been assisting migrants since the buses began coming to Washington earlier this year, was also on the ground Saturday night helping arrivals. The DC community has been welcoming buses from Texas anytime they've come since April. Christmas Eve in freezing cold weather is no different, Fisher said. We are always here welcoming folks with open arms. It's not clear who is responsible for sending the migrants to the Naval Observatory, where the vice president's residence is located, though CNN reported earlier this year that Texas Gov. Greg Abbott had sent buses of migrants north, including to a location outside Harris's home. CNN has reached out to Abbott's office for comment on the latest arrivals. The White House, however, put the blame on the Texas governor, calling it a cruel, dangerous, and shameful stunt. Governor Abbott abandoned children on the side of the road in below freezing temperatures on Christmas Eve without coordinating with any federal or local authorities, White House spokesperson Abdullah Hassan said in a statement. As we have repeatedly said, we are willing to work with anyone, Republican or Democrat alike, on real solutions, like the comprehensive immigration reform and border security measures President Biden sent to Congress on his first day in office, but these political games accomplish nothing and only put lives in danger, Hassan said. Abbott is one of at least 3 Republican governors who have taken credit for busing or flying migrants north this year to protest the Biden administration's immigration policies. He previously confirmed in September that his state had sent the buses to Harris's residence at that time. An earlier version of this story misidentified the person who spoke about her group being prepared for the migrant arrivals. It was Amy Fisher, a volunteer with the Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Network. This story has been updated with additional information.